The closest spot to mine.
Okay, so that makes it even harder.
Good evening. Well, I am so thrilled to see all of you here. I truly thought, as busy as everyone is in May, that we might have not as many people here this evening. So I'm very, very excited to have you here. This will be about an hour and a half forum tonight because, again, I know you need to get home and continue to do homework. We're still in school. But this is another opportunity for us to talk as a community about the future for our school district in terms of where we want to go and how that is impacted or impacts our facilities. And so as a result, the board has charged me last summer with saying we really need to get serious about a facilities master plan. That when we look at our facilities, there are concerns about their age and various, and it's hard to make decisions when you don't have an overall plan and so as a lens to look at. And so we've been working this year, and I see so many new faces. Thank you for being here this evening, and thanks for not the old faces, but the faces that have been here for other meetings. And so we began talking about what do we want for our school district? What is our vision? What's our mission? Because the Eanes School District is unique and different from other school districts. And so we start with that lens. What is important to us? And then we move into how do we have our facilities help with that mission and goals. We have had, this is our third symposium, which is a 2-day meeting with our master planners. And in that 2 days, we have had opportunity for community dialogue at each one of those meetings. And so we are to the point now we've been in an data gathering phase. Tonight's meeting will really be around trying to share some of that data that so we'll share quite a bit of information and tell you how to get more information if you'd like that of the processes that we've been through. We have 13 subcommittees, one for every one of our schools. And then we have one built around our mission about rigorous academic experiences. So what are we doing in the area of academics? And then enriching opportunities. And then we have another subcommittee on non-instructional facilities. And then we have another subcommittee on, help me, community outreach. Thank you very much. I was sorry, Claudia, I did it. The community outreach is talking about how do we bring the whole community together so that this master plan is a whole community effort. So that's where we are. And the third tonight's is some information to share with you, and certainly an opportunity. We want that opportunity for the community to ask questions, but also to make your voices heard. We worked with Broadus and Associates, a local planning company, and they have helped us design the process, such as the 13 subcommittees and what the charge for those subcommittees have been. And they kind of manage the process for us, and then helped us with RFQ. We put out for a master planning firm. We have been very fortunate to work with Cunningham Group out of Minneapolis, and they have helped with the concepts, with the thoughts associated with this process as well. So I know you see many of our board members here, and so Dr. Callison, Mr. Hargett, Mr. Ross, Mr. Frost, Dr. Jones, Ms. Martin are here. And this is posted as an opportunity for the board to be here, and posted as an official meeting of the board, although they chose to be members of the community tonight as well. So So I welcome you again. Thank you so much for participating. I'm very excited that you're here. And I want to turn it over to Mr. Stephen Colston. He's our representative, our point person for Broadus and Associates. Again, they have helped us maneuver through this process, this very, very laborious process that I think is rewarding.
But fun and rewarding. So how many people, this is their first participation in one of these open forums? I thought I saw some new faces here tonight. Well, first of all, thank you very much for coming out. Dr. Weldon was talking a little bit about process, and we've put a lot of emphasis in talking about how the process is really as important as the product that we're going to end up with at the end of this process. So what we're trying to do is get a lot of different feedback, a lot of different thoughts. We have a working advisory committee and an expanded task force that includes representatives from the community and the schools and parents and students, as well as the leaderships of the schools and the subcommittees that Dr. Wellman just indicated. We've been going through a series of very intense working sessions, as a lot of folks who I know, I see several folks that sit on the task force and advisory committee that can personally attest to. And that's been really great. But it's also, we also recognize that not everybody can, free up a couple of days of time. So we want these forums and opportunities to be able to share these to the broader audience as many times as we can. As Dr. Wellman shared, we have been in a process of analysis and information gathering. We've begun to crunch that information a little bit. You'll get to hear some of the summaries of that this evening. But that's also getting now overlaid, if you kind of start thinking this as a little bit of layering with a whole backdrop that's been occurring over the last several months, which is identifying goals and establishing standards and basically, collectively creating and identifying what the benchmark is against which we were going to hold ourselves. And now we start molding that together with a physical framework and start again to draw some conceptual ideas and conclusions from that, as we move into the next phases. So, you're going to start getting into getting a little bit of a snapshot as quickly as we can this evening of some of a little bit more nuts and bolts information. It was interesting because somebody shared with me earlier that of all the sessions that they participated in the Miami Task Force and an advisory committee, that this was one of the most meaty ones that they felt they participated in yet. So we're making some good progress and moving forward, and so you'll get a little bit of a snapshot of that tonight. So we did want to talk a little bit about, actually one last thing that I wanted to mention is, and kind of a tribute to Claudia and the Public Outreach Committee. Part of the reason that you are even aware that we are even having this event is that committee, while it's not focused on the inner workings of what it should the school be, it's very focused externally about how can we broadly communicate throughout the district overall in terms of participation. And so we've been doing that in multiple different forums, multiple different formats. You may have read about it, you may have seen it on web blast, but also you can turn an email blast, but you can also find lots and lots of information on our website. If you Google EISD Facilities Master Plan, it'll pull you right there. If you go to the main site of EISD, it'll pull you right there. And outcomes and summaries of each of these symposia are then summarized in a report, and that information is out there and accessible to you. Also, you see the little video back there with our crack film producer. We're actually capturing. Is this live feed tonight? So we're live feed, so it's fun. I think at our first movie night, we were actually getting people coming on and commenting. So that information gets captured as well. So I'm joined by my colleague Cody Newman, and it was nice because she's just back from maternity leave, and she said she was able to go back and catch up on a couple of the sessions that she missed, and by watching those video feeds. So thanks, Cookie Newsom, I said. Anyway, without any further ado, except for one thing I want to talk about is kind of ground rules for the seat. And we have a lot of people, as I'm looking around and kind of seeing familiar faces from our task force and our advisory committee that have been able to be with us during the day in some of our real intense work sessions, that have rolled up their sleeves and got a lot of dirt under their fingernails. Tonight we have an opportunity to engage a bunch of you that don't have the opportunity to be here all the time. So if we could just maybe have a courtesy to, for those of us who are kind of in this sort of day in, day out on our detailed committees, is really give some opportunity for forum and feedback first to a lot of the folks that are having, maybe some of those first-hand participants. The other thing that we'd like to ask is, especially for those of you who are new or hearing some of this for the first time, and especially have questions, is to strongly encourage at least one question or comment. Don't just be a fly on the wall, kind of sleepy passerby here. We really want this forum to be interaction and engagement, and so we appreciate your participation and joining us here this evening. With that, I'll turn it over to Judy and take it away.
All right, thanks. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Excellent.
Good.
Wanted to make
Remember
sure you were all
last Monday.
Want to piggyback on a couple of things that Stephen said. You will notice that at your tables, there are some 4 by 6 inch sticky Post-it notes. Feel free to jot down any reactions, thoughts, questions that you have throughout the course of the evening. We will take those and stick them on that large scroll of white paper that you see in the back. And we will make sure to keep track of any thoughts and ideas that come forward this evening as well. 2 things I want to say about the value of doing a master plan. A master plan really serves as a roadmap for the future for this district. It enables you to implement improvements logically over time. So that, for example, if you make an improvement 2 years from now, it's something that doesn't have to be redone 5 years from now because it hadn't been thought about in relationship to the whole vision. The other piece that's very, very important, and if you just take a minute to look around the room, look at the wonderful group that we have gathered this evening. This says a lot about your commitment to this district, to your children, to the master plan itself. A master plan is as valuable as those folks, you in the room, helping to shape that master plan. Each and every one of you brings a unique perspective to this process. I think that's why Stephen and Dr. Wellman were talking about the myriad of opportunities to be able to participate and lend your voice into this conversation so that we're shaping a master plan that's uniquely suited to Eanes ISD. It's going to be different than the master plan of any other district in the state. It really is, in order to be successful, uniquely tailored to your needs and not mine. So just a little bit on what we did this week. On Tuesday of this week, much like you're going to hear this evening, we had a series of presentations that really started to dive a little bit deeper into the needs among the various committees and groups. We have asked those folks to even more succinctly present their findings this evening. So rather than a TED talk of 20 minutes, we've been given 5 minutes this evening. Okay, so they've really been asked to condense and hit the highlights of their findings. Tomorrow, we, with the Master Planning Task Force, are then going to start looking as a whole, and looking at scenarios, and looking at what ifs, the possibilities, the ramifications of taking all of this information, this groundwork that has been laid to date, and now start applying it district-wide so that we can start then getting into more and more detail in terms of what it means eventually at the next symposium at a per-site basis. First and foremost, a master plan needs to be grounded in your mission and vision of the district and your goals. That's what makes it unique to Eanes ISD, because nobody else shares the same priorities that we do in exactly the same way. So that's where we started this whole process. We also took a look at the 8 themes that came out of the community dialogues from last summer. We wanted to make sure that all of the groundwork that has been done to date has gone into forming a foundation, a solid foundation for this master plan. A master plan that first and foremost is grounded in the learning that you want to have happen here at Eanes ISD. We asked everybody to coalesce their ideas into a consolidated vision statement that we would use to guide this master planning process. This is the outcome. I will read it because I think it really, really captures the goals that you have for this effort. Eanes Independent School District will provide for its community of learners facilities and environments that foster collaboration and enhance engagement, exploration, and purposeful application for deep, lifelong learning. EISD will have technology-rich, energy-efficient, fiscally responsible, and financially sustainable facilities that provide opportunities for student choice in creative and enriching activities and promote the involvement of the greater Eanes community. Your physical stock needs to be resources that serve the entire community, not just those of our school-age children. Facilities will provide furniture, tools, and workspaces that are forward-thinking, flexible, and adaptable for relevant, meaningful, and personalized learning. Facilities and environments will allow the intentional design of experiences and life skills necessary for each student's future and global community. Isn't that a powerful statement? It is really packed with a lot of goals and objectives that we have for your students here in order to be successful in the future. And the master plan needs to now provide the physical facilities that will enable you to live out this vision to the fullest extent possible. That's what we're doing. At the last symposium, working with, and many of you, when you were at the last community forum, also got a sense of the facility principles, which essentially are the overarching commitments to what's important for all schools in Eanes ISD. What is it that you're going to commit to in order to deliver on that vision that you just saw? And then the task force worked on a set of facility design standards, which really take a look at what are the physical ramifications. If these are the things we're committing to, what does it mean physically? Not fiscally, but that too has ramifications. Okay, so let's talk about what else we should consider. Right. So this is our agenda for the evening. These are the presentations that you're going to hear. I think for the sake of time, what we will do is we will have each presenter.
You did it, Jeraine. Way to go.
Way to go.
Thank you. I thought maybe it was
my eyes.
I'm so glad it was. We'll have each presenter go through their findings, and then at the end, we'll ask for questions, comments, and have a conversation together. That way we can make sure we get through all of these topics. Okay? Is everybody ready? All right. All right. I would like to start Wellman.
Well, you don't don't get desk map tonight. Actually, I'm going to present just briefly the summary. You have in front of you the slides that desk map used yesterday. I've also asked Dr. Callison if they can come back and make a more thorough presentation to the board about the demographic study. And with 5 minutes tonight, I thought maybe I could pinch hit for them around the demographics. So what you have here are the slides, and on our website is the complete study available, and it's already posted for you. So I just want to share with you, and we can start with the slides for those that have that. Just as a background, it's just to help with our decisions, look at the demographic studies, look at our attendance zones, land use, mapping, and the last full study that was completed for Eanes was in 2008. So on an annual basis, you don't see much change because we're changing at about 1% or so on an annual basis. But if we're looking 3, 6, and 10 years out, we need to take into consideration that trend in a longer term view. Okay, there we are. I've got it.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah, I've got it. I've got it. Community demographic trends and changes are in the report. A geographic and student analysis was completed, a growth analysis, and then finally there's some enrollment projections. In terms of the community demographic overview, just looking at the broader community, recognizing that our schools are a reflection of a larger community. What's happening in our larger community are in terms of economic changes, what's happening impacts the district as well. And then looking at the demographic overview, the population forecast, how many school-aged children forecast, and then of course changes such as increase in births, deaths, net migration kinds of things. Overall, we find the findings are on the right-hand side that the population change is increasing, but slowly, both in the community, as you can see with the red, but also in households and also in families. Households are growing, but we're pretty landlocked, so the houses, we don't have huge developments, but we see households are increasing in some ways. But the family households are growing, which suggests more children. In terms of the geographic analysis, just for those of you that aren't familiar with our demographic studies, we organize our school district by planning zones. And so those planning zones allow us, should we need to make any kind of slight changes to keep our schools at a workable size or to fill them up as they need to be. You can see in some cases we've had to develop to separate a planning zone into an A, B, or C because we didn't need the whole planning zone to move, but we needed parts of it. And so we changed boundaries, I think, in 08, 07, and 08, and it was just a small amount moving into the Eanes school district, Eanes community, and now Eanes is quite full. So that's how we organize it. It's into 31 planning zones. I think that's the total, and that helps us with decisions. What you have here is a plotting of all of the students in the district who ride buses. It's not total number of students, even though it says that, because the only way we know where their address is where we plot it is through our transponder system. So this is plotted all of our students, whether they're an elementary student, middle school, or high school student, and so you can just see where our students are located. This is a very important chart, and so if you have the paper copy, and be sure and turn down the edges of this, because this shows you where adjustments are made, and it's by number of students, not by percentage. So in the red area, it's the loss of 15 or more students in that planning 12 went down 15 or more students. And there's a chart in the demographic study itself that'll tell you exactly the number that it changed. Then the next area, of course, is if we lost 1 to 14, if we had an increase, and you can see the bright green is we had an increase of 40 or more students. So you can see the areas across our district where we've got growth and where we have migration in the district. This is really any major developments, and in a district where you've got a lot of open land, this might be a whole section. For us, we have 4 major developments. You can see the areas where they are and what they're named there. And there's further explanation in the demographic report itself. But we don't have a lot of major development areas. Our growth is either turnover or it's a lot here or there where a house is built. When you look at our enrollment projections, we look at 4 major factors to include. We look at our kindergarten enrollment. That's why we do try so hard to get kindergarten roundup. That gives us our first real predictor about school-age students. We look at the aging of the grade cohorts. How many are actually graduating compared to how many are coming in, and the movement grade to grade. Of course, the impact of new residential development, and I shared with you that's not. And we also looked at our intra-district transfers and the impact of intra-district transfers on the enrollment. Other factors that could influence our demographics might be private school enrollment, either coming into the district or out of the district. That might be for a variety of reasons, but it also might be related to when they transition from either elementary to middle or middle to high school. What are the trends there? Housing market, the foreclosures, and of course events such as business closures, major companies that might leave. So in terms of just getting to the bottom line, this is the conservative scenario, and these numbers include projections for transfers. In the demographic report, there's also a chart without the inter-district transfer, so you can see the comparison. It's from 2013, 78, 98, and then moving to 2018, 82, 74. So just small, very small, less than 1% or right at 1%, incremental growth, but aggregate, you can see that will have an impact. And in the demographic report itself, it also goes back to 2008, I think. And it will show you that's been the trend, 1 or 2%, well, over 10 years that has an impact. In fact, it's an elementary school or more in that time frame. There's a moderate scenario where that goes from 79.83 to 86.82, and so you see a more aggressive kind of scenario. And the question that will need to be thought about is, for budgeting, you might use a more conservative. For master planning, you might use a more moderate look at your enrollment. And that'll all have to be discussed by the board. In terms of our capacity, each one by school, so I won't go through those, but just to share with you that it's there for every school, and how that capacity, when we might reach it, when we might be faced with some decisions that need to be made for each of the schools. This is the moderate projections and what happens with those capacities. And then at the secondary level, the conservative projections and the moderate projections, and where we would reach those capacities. So the summary is demographics indicate a slow growth. There are some geographic shifts in our enrollment. The housing growth really isn't a factor for us. We have a projected enrollment growth, although it's small, but it is continuous. And we do have some schools that have capacity issues, in fact, quite a few of them. So that is our summary of our demographics. Dr. Hoskins.
next?
Judy, do we want to take any questions right now?
What we said, Kathy, is
No,
that we
sorry.
were gonna do them all at the end.
Okay.
So we're just gonna keep going. Is that-
Oh, jot your questions down.
Yes. Again, the notepads, please feel free to use those. Jot your ideas, thoughts, questions as we're going through this evening. And we'll come back to everything at the end together. All right, so next we have Mr. Servant.
Good evening, I'm Bob Surrey. I see a lot of familiar faces. I'm Summer Lieutenant, Director of Maintenance and Operations for the district. And one of the things that we did is we asked Alpha Facility Solutions to come in and do an assessment of our facilities. Best way I can describe it is from floor tile to ceiling tile. There are some things they omitted, and I'll get to that here in a little bit. This is about a 200-page working draft down to a 20-minute presentation condensed to 5. So I feel like Jimmy Jones up here trying to get through this. One of the things that we have going on, and this is part of it, is 4 different layers going through. Part of that is the planning of a possible bond issue, the assessment that this is, the master planning which we are working on now, and then the information I'm gathering from site principals and district directors on their needs and assessment of their own facilities. One thing I want to hit on this page is this condition assessment they did is broken down into Austin, Texas. It's not based on, and the numbers aren't based on Philadelphia, Detroit, or Pensacola. Not only are they not only just Texas, but it's broken down into Austin's, because what we're doing here is different than what they're doing in Midland, is different what they're doing in McAllen. So they look at those factors as well. This is the scope. When they started, when they finished, 37 buildings, a little over 1.4 million, and the areas included. Now, as far as equipment or special needs might be the unit that's inside where we have all of our servers. That's a unique piece of equipment, so that's going to be one of those special need areas. What is not in is roofing, and that's actually taking place by another company that did it previously, so they're able to do it a little bit quicker and have done it before, so they have all the background data, which is important. Parking lot, roadways, the site utilities, and amenities, that's just a special group that when we get to that point and want to dig into that, we can do so. And then sports facilities, and we're looking at the turf fields, the tracks, those type of things, because that's unique, and we use Hellas quite a bit to do those facilities. And again, they have the background and they have a life cycle on those fields, so that makes it a little bit easier, and we can get that turnaround quicker because they have all the background and all the data for that for us. One thing real quick, when you see the numbers later on, this can be a huge number. Not to scare anybody, but roofing is what it is. It's a day like today, this evening, it's not that big a deal. This morning, it could have been a big problem. So that number will change some of the things. They give a Q rating just like schools or anything else. It's no reason for me to read every one of those. This one right here, this is where you have to make a decision. If the skeleton of the building is in good shape and you want to redo the infrastructure inside of it, a remodel basically, a gut and redo, that's one of the options. Sometimes it's better to take that building down and rebuild. So these are just recommendations they give us when you get to this point. This is how they do it. We use this building. If this building was to cost $10 million today to build, and it needed $3 million worth of system replacements, it would get a score of 70. So that's how they figure that out. I'm going to click this through. This talks about the life cycle curve of a piece of equipment. And this is normally brand new. This is where you have issues. This is where it is hit. You are no longer, it's costing you money to run that piece of equipment. If it dies on you right here, at a bad time of the season, it can cost you as much as 4 times more to replace that versus planning and replacing it here. Is it always that much? No, but it can. And I've unfortunately been in a situation where that's happened. That's not a fun situation to be in. The other cycle is, and we have a lot of this type in the district because we do because of our preventative maintenance, and it's extended life. This is how long it's designed. If you take care of your equipment, it can last that much longer, which helps you plan out and meet those and not have those unforeseen emergencies. If you can have just the opposite if you don't take care of it. West Virginia experienced that. They replaced a lot of systems statewide. They didn't take care of them, and within 8 to 10 years they were failing. Units and systems shouldn't fail that quickly. They went back and found out preventative maintenance wasn't being done, so they now have partnered with a company, and they have a statewide and funded preventative maintenance program. Again, if you still have that, and it gives you your useful life. And that's where this gap in here is where you can do a lot of your planning. Again, this is cost assumptions. It basically goes back to this right here. The cost index, RS means, and area builders and contractors, and what other like construction projects have cost in the Austin metro area. This is the important one. This is the one you would dog ear. Right now, this is where our district, this is all of our buildings, and this is the rate, the FCI, that percentage of where we're at with all those buildings. The average is 86. They don't get those kind of numbers. This is where I got all puffy-chested when I saw those numbers. If you take out the Rock House, which is, Laura, don't look at these numbers, right there, it jumps up to 92. The average nationwide is just a little above 70. Here's the between the eyes for this one. In 5 years, if we stay the course, we drop down to 66%. The reason we are here is because of 2006 and what we did last summer and what we're doing this summer. And that's the capital improvements district-wide. I can't emphasize that enough. If, as patrons and as administration, not had the foresight to do the kind of work they did previously, this number wouldn't be here. If you don't continue those type of, that mentality and that foresight, this is what it drops to. This is what it does in 10 years. So it's real important to keep pushing those type of renewals. This breaks down each system. Each building has walls, floors, ceilings, lights, all have a number, and it's the same for every building. All of those numbers, it's a uniform, that's what they call it, and it combines into where you have electrical district-wide. So these are district-wide numbers. And currently, we're looking at about $16.7 million of replacement cost. A lot of that's going to be addressed this summer. 5 years from now, we're looking at $57 million, oh, 57.6. And in 10 years, 88. And again, this is not roofing, this is not roadways, this is not athletic fields, so those costs will have to be added into this. Also, furniture, IT, infrastructure, so that's not in here as well. This is just the building itself as far as mechanical, flooring, and
Bob, I
walls.
think the cumulative is misleading because it seems like it would be 16 plus 57 plus 88.
Correct, thank you. And that's, yes, that's not, it's not that one plus 56 plus 88. No, it's right now, this is what it would cost, and then it's 57, but that 16 is within that. And within that 88 would be that 57. Thank you. What you want is to have a flat line across here. What you can do on this type of, when you're looking at these kind of numbers, is when you have a spike like this, and you have the ability to look at where your systems are and what's out there, and the best way I can describe it is you're in a tower, control tower in an airport, and you have planes coming in. These planes right here are running out of fuel. We need to get them on the ground. These are a little bit farther out. They can circle outside LaGuardia for a little bit longer. If you have the capacity and the foresight, what you do is you take some of these airplanes and get them on the ground sooner and do some maintenance to them, and then they last longer. It also helps reduce in 5 years and in 10 years your cost on down the road, and it keeps your systems running more efficiently, more effectively. The difference, and you don't want to be here. This is good. This is a system, if it fails, causes other system failures. A roof, then you have ceiling issues, you have flooring issues, you have indoor air issues. This is more like cosmetics, and I don't want to make it sound like it's not important, because colors and sound, those type of things in a classroom are important. So that's why, but education can take place. So that's the difference. This it'll stop. This it can continue. There it is in 2018, how it breaks down. And in 2023, that's even better. Yes, sir.
Could you kind of go over that a little bit? I kind of lost me just on the last forecast by priority there.
This one right here?
Yeah, how that chart works.
What they are saying, of the numbers that we saw for 2013, of the 16 million, 159,000 of that is a high priority. In other words, it's something that if it was to fail, would cause other systems problems. That could be some bad roofing. That could be a valve that they've seen that's weak. The fortunate thing is a lot of the things that they saw are going to be addressed this summer through the things that we've planned for this summer. Did that answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
I just.
This is what I talked about earlier, the unit format. So this number for district-wide, it would be for exterior walls. It would be the same number for Bridgepoint, for Westridge, for Eanes Elementary, for the high school. So that number would stay the same, and that way when we combine all of those findings, it totals up our actual numbers. And that's for each set of those years. And again, it goes all the way down to sprinkler systems, electrical. Any questions? We're doing it later, sorry. These are some of the recommendations they made. This one is normally the very top one. The reason it was 3 here is because our numbers were so high, that percentage was so high at 86%. Most schools that's up higher. The reason they put this school is a good example. They're single pane windows, so there's a lot of heating loss, you feel it when you walk by them, so you're wasting a lot of electricity costs, so you can gain all that. It also makes the classrooms more comfortable. The doors themselves are in great shape. This is the components, the closures, the locking mechanisms. That's a safety and security issue. It's also, as silly as it sounds, it's a pest issue, not the 4-leg doors. And I went too far. Ceiling tiles, that would be the next one. About every 10 years you want to replace it with grids and everything you want to do, about every 20 years. And then we are actually addressing this one as we're replacing and going to LEDs. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Okay, let me get my partner with me. My name is Chuck Fields. I'm with Fields and Associates, and I have Don Sansom here with Urban Design. And our task was to evaluate each of the district's facilities in terms of, what can you build on that site? What are the constraints? What are the opportunities? And certainly, part of that exercise, architecturally speaking, we basically we kind of have a certain set of rules that we follow in Central Texas from a building standpoint, but it all starts with the site. And that's why Don is here. As a civil engineer in Central Texas, you don't turn over one rock without a civil engineer saying it's okay. And so Don is here. He'll have a little comment here in just a minute. But he's to kind of give us a little bit of an idea as to what are the constraints on the sites? What are the opportunities on the site? Every site, there's potential, but there's certainly challenges for each one of them. Let me kind of start with kind of the overall district, the map and all the different properties that are listed there. And I'm going to basically, never did. I'm going to kind of let Don, since he is Mr. Engineer himself, kind of give you a little background on some of the site information.
So for those who don't know me, I'm Don Sanson. I'm a civil engineer here in Austin. I've had the good fortune of working with the district for a number of years on, in fact, all of the campuses. So I've been able to gain some knowledge, both from a practical perspective and also from the perspective of helping the district obtain the necessary permits to build facilities on the campuses. And as I've begun to work with the team on the facility master plan, my contribution to the team is, I tried to describe this a little bit yesterday, is I bring reality to the team. And it's in the form of this, part of what we're doing in this exercise is to dream. We want to dream what district is going to look like 5, 10 years down the road. And so as those dreams are being kind of floated in air, I'm the guy who brings us back to reality and says, well, can we achieve those dreams in terms of the facilities and the properties that the district owns? But that's not to say that the district can say, well, to meet our dreams, Don, maybe we need to go get some more property. Well, that might be an option, but we're going to start with the property we have. And so my contribution is to help the district understand what you have and therefore what you can add. And can you add anything to your current campuses? And you might say, well, Don, what do you mean? Sure we can add. We own the property. Well, that might be true if you're out in West Texas and nobody cares. But we're not in West Texas. We're in Austin, which is a very highly regulated community. And as Chuck said, there's lots of rules, lots of constraints about what you can build and what you can't. So the constraints consist of both physical constraints, and examples of those would be steep slopes, floodplains, trees actually impose constraints on where you can build in Austin. And then there's also regulatory constraints, and that is the regulations that apply to each piece of property. And the district owns property both within the city of Austin and the city of West Lake Hills, and both of those cities have regulations that say what you can and what you can't do. Okay. So this analysis of the constraints, both physical and regulatory, is pretty important because, again, we want to try to achieve the dream, and we need to be able to answer, well, can we accomplish that on facilities that we currently have? So we're in the process, Chuck and I and other members of the team are in the process of identifying each of those constraints. And we've begun that process now. We have some quick exhibits that we're going to show you that begin to demonstrate what some of those constraints are. So this is just an example of the Bark Creek Elementary site, which if you drive out there, you can look at it and you say, well, Don, there's all kinds of open land around that school. Surely we can add additional facilities if we need more facilities on that campus. If I could more of that. So if you've been to Bark Creek Elementary, there's the building of course, Patterson Lane, and this is a little inter-campus drive that connects back to Westridge Middle Schools. The flat land on this piece of property is where the buildings are. Okay? Where there's no buildings is steep land or floodplain. Okay? So that's land that's not very buildable. There is, on this particular site, there's an area back here that's been cleared and open, and it's sort of a ball field back there. It's not improved very well, but it's buildable, it's flat, and if we chose to, we could probably add. But a big constraint for each one of these sites is, and I'm going to throw out a term here that some of you may be familiar with, and that is the allowable impervious cover on each site. And that goes back to the regulatory constraints. So we're going to be identifying how much additional buildings, driveways, parking lots, sidewalks, other impervious surfaces can be added to each of these schools, and if so, where on the school? Because if the only buildable area on this site is way back here in the corner, then it's not very practical for an elementary school. Okay? And that same kind of issue, proximity of those buildable areas, that's a big part of what is feasible for each of these school campuses. So we're going to be bringing that information in a more detailed format to the team, and we just wanted you to know what we're doing and why we think it's important.
One other important point, portables don't count against impervious cover. So I mean, just to remove a portable doesn't count in terms of impervious cover. A couple of other things that certainly is part of the overall evaluation, let's say that a particular site has very limited impervious cover allowable left. Certainly you can always go up. You can build on top or stack or something along those lines. Those are the ways that you kind of overcome some of those challenges. So there's definitely opportunities, but there's the constraints that we're trying to identify to understand, you know, what are some of the approaches that can be considered as you move forward. So let's move to the next one and let Don kind of give a little bit. Well, yeah, if you'll just kind of give them a couple of different examples.
Okay.
Let's go through Bridgepoint. Okay.
So Bridgepoint, where we are, again, buildable land is where the existing buildings are located. There's a pretty steep incline down to the ball field, and then below the ball field is a big open green area that's non-buildable. It's within a setback from this creek. And when this site plan was approved by the City of Austin, the City of Austin said, all right, we'll approve a site plan. It's going to be subject to our regulations, and you can't build anything beyond that line. Okay. Likewise, they said, you know what, we don't really like things adjacent to Loop 360. So we don't want any buildings within 100 feet of the right-of-way of Loop 360. So that's why there's nothing there. We can't put anything there. Okay. Well, Don, can't we add something kind of off the edge of these existing wings? Answer, yes. But this is where the new playgrounds are being built as we speak. So we'd have to give something up if we added to the existing buildings. So again, we're not here to tell you today what you should or shouldn't do. But we do think it's very important to tell the district what the constraints are for each site. And each of the school campuses have constraints. Each of the schools is subject to a regulating plan that's been approved by either the City of Westlake Hills or the City of Austin. And, you know,
We'll go to the middle school.
this is a great one. This is a great one. Hill Country Middle School is probably the most restricted site the school district owns. The most recent addition to Hill Country was this wing here on the north end. And it essentially used up all the additional allowable impervious cover on this site. I think there's 20,000 square feet more that could be added, and that's a pretty small addition. And you might say, well, Don, we got all this land back over here, floodplain. It's all in the floodplain. Can't build in the floodplain. Well, we got this land down here. You're out of impervious cover. We can't add more buildings to this campus. Again, a very small amount. So what's the answer? Go up. If we needed to add more buildings to this campus, it would be going up. Tear down, replace. So again, that's the kind of information that the facility master plan and the committee is going to need to know for each of the campuses. The high school is an interesting case. It's subject to the City of Westlake Hills regulations. It's actually in their ETJ and not inside of the city limits of the City of Westlake Hills. And therefore has a little more flexibility in terms of what can and cannot be built on the site. The high school itself is pretty much covering up all the land. There's not much land on the high school that doesn't already have a building on it. There's actually a creek that runs through here and discharges and comes around through, actually this direction, through between the baseball field and the transportation facility. So that land is not buildable. The interesting thing about the high school site is it's adjacent to two additional tracts owned by the district. The district was foresighted enough to think about purchasing when they became available. So the admin site here has got this little narrow piece that's buildable, and then the Shriner tract here that actually still has, I guess the building has not been demoed completely. Correct. And a parking lot that high school kids park on today. So again, this gets back to the issue of proximity and whether it's feasible for a high school student to walk and to get to another building nearby without being too far. Adjacent also to the high school are the properties owned by the district on the south side of West Main. This blue tract is actually a former residence and currently has a small shed on it used by facilities and operations for their outdoor mowers and that kind of equipment. There is a floodplain that comes through this little corner of that property, and access to that site from West Bank Drive is today via a little low water crossing. So it's not exactly accessible. There'd have to be a little small bridge constructed here for access.
As you know, this is a work in progress, and it's a continuation as we continue to get the information from all the governmental jurisdictions as we continue to trying to identify what the constraints are. What we want to do now is, we're doing that on every piece of property, and that's just kind of the format that we're working with to try to help us make good decisions as we move forward. So what we'd like to do now is move to our next presenter and keep going. All right. Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm back.
I'm cool.
I couldn't get to space the final frontier thing, the Star track coming up, but we met as a group. It's myself, child nutrition, safety, and Laura with safety and risk management, transportation, and IT. And we met, and being what we do for a living, we jumped right into solutions and almost had to back up what some of our problems were. And space was the big thing that kept popping up. Over the same thing over and over again. You've seen some of that just by the report prior to. We kind of even looked at the portables, and we kiddingly said that, but we actually have some of our folks are in portables. Mr. Bechtel gets to do that this summer, and that one right over there while we do some of the remodel work. The rest of his people are going in this one. This is where construction is housed. So that's one of them. They're approaching their usable life cycle of 30 years on it. So there's some issues there as far as where we have people located. Again, this is at one of the elementary. This is at Barton Creek. This is where the kitchen manager gets to sit, and Laura doesn't see that chair in front of that door right there. Again, this is out at West Ridge, right in front of where they go in for their storeroom, but this is, and we're making it work. That's the big thing. Freezer's outside. It's protected, but it's still outside, so it's less than, space is needed to bring these things in, and also so they don't have to go out in inclement weather to get product. This is outside the Rock House, and it's always like this, double parked. There's just not enough parking for the people that are in that building. We have 6 buses are parked at the ATS building. They're not all, some of them are the larger vans, but that's because there's no more room, no more spots at the transportation office. And the spare buses, if one goes down, They literally take one of the pickups, drive up to the Shriner and pick the bus up so it can go out on its route. So there's some issues there as well. I shouldn't complain. I actually have 2 visitor spots at my building, so I'm doing good, so I won't say much about it. IT in 2006 and in 2011 had remodels done to, or new space for the NOC and Network Operating Center, and then did some remodel work to it again last year, and we still have office space that we're renting of 2,800 square feet with 10 people in it to help, and you get an idea of how packed they are in there. And they were excited because they had some open space here because they were getting a new shipment of iPads coming in. So they were excited to have open space for that day. And then this is just another angle of that. So they actually have 11 people at the NOC itself working every day. In my building, my conference room will house 11 people. The problem is I have 25, not including custodial. If Tim Whitesong in transportation wants to have a meeting with his drivers, he has to go to the ATS building. I have to make sure I got the right one. And if Anthony wants to meet with his custodian staff, he has to pick a school or another location because we just don't have that space to have that meeting. Typically, we fit what we can fit as far as support services. And a lot of times, we don't think about planning out where we need to be. And as part of the master plan, we're looking at doing that. And one of the things that kept coming up is, of course, it's an issue, but we don't get to communicate as well as we would like to and get to talk to each other. Well, we talked about IT and mechanical rooms. Acreages, again, we just discussed that. Where we do have land, we have to be careful, especially with transportation. Is it a sensitive area because of the fuels and those type of things, and traffic flow, getting buses in and out, and even mine vehicles, getting them in and out, and pulling trailers as far as with the grounds crew. So there's those kind of things we need to think about. And we're actually in 2 different locations. Where my maintenance workers are located is a separate areas where grounds are located. So we're actually in 2 different, logistically 2 different places. The other thing we have is all the fields. Brian knows for a fact he has 2 fields out of his place, but one of them is kind of disjointed from the rest of his campus and people really don't know about it. Getting in there and getting that field up to where it needs to be, to where we can alternate back and forth between those fields, giving them a chance to rest. Westridge Middle School, one of their fields we shut down the year that I got here because of the drought. They had opened, the cracks had gotten that big just because between the drought and we weren't able to let that field rest and recover and let grass grow again. The turf fields are kind of a blessing for my guys in that regards. Again, a place where we can all sit and meet. We actually try to call each other just to go to lunch so we can find out what everybody's doing. Fortunately, Laura and I kind of run into each other on occasion at the admin building so we can talk and see what's going on. Here's a good example. We're crammed in here, and not only are we crammed in here now, but when we were here yesterday afternoon, we took away this library for half a day for students. We did the same at Westridge Middle School, we did at Eanes Elementary, tomorrow we're doing it at Hill Country. So we're disjoining students because of the lack of that space. We do have the ATS building, which has a really nice conference. It has a drop-down screen, it has everything you would want in it, but it's the only place, so it's overbooked. We talked about floodplains, trees. We're real careful on what we can and cannot cut down. So we have to take those things into consideration, even to signage. We're very restricted on signs that we can put up, and even for how long we can put them up, and even to the types of roofs and the color of those roofs on some of our buildings. So there's a lot of things that we have to take in consideration when we look at not just the environment we work in, but the environment that surrounds us and how we fit into that environment. Absolutely, was quick.
All right. Dr. Buckle, would you please share the academic experiences findings?
Good evening, everyone. Would you like to stand up, move a little, anything? These are hard chairs. I feel better, get a little movement. Or not. So this is the academic experiences. For those of you that may not have met, I'm Bill Beckle, I'm Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction and Assessment in the district. This report was fairly challenging to try to think ahead about what the academic experiences should be for current and future students. We looked at a lot of research. We conducted interviews with teachers at all levels and with students at all 3 levels. And then we used some guiding questions. And you can see why this is kind of hard, why we have limited answers. I mean, even 5 years from now, will we have textbooks, traditional, or will they all be online? We don't know those answers at this point. Things are changing that rapidly. So what are these roles? What's technology going to do, and so on? How do we move toward the future while preserving the good from the past and still teaching the required curriculum? Dr. Wellman and I talk about we're moving forward into this rapid change, 90 miles an hour, and we are held accountable to a testing system in this state that's looking in the rearview mirror. What should we be teaching? People say, why are you still making kids do multiplication and learn them within a minute and all that sort of thing? They can use calculators. Why are you doing handwriting? These are big questions to struggle over. And for this master plan, and what I hope comes out of it, is question 6. What facilities, furniture, technology should we or shouldn't we then invest in? What we do know is the children that start school next year in 2013-14 are going to graduate in the year 2026. This is our newest campus, Bridgepoint. It will be 33 years old. Parts of Westlake will be 57 years old. The original parts of Eanes Elementary will be 121 years old at that point. And everything else is changing like crazy. This is the fastest time of change it's ever been in history. Very rapid. Things are becoming increasingly complex, globalized, technological, diversity is exploding. So we're going to have to be able to teach kids the skills to be able to deal with that kind of rapid change. And right now we need them to have those skills for the 21st century, but they're working in schools built for the 20th century. So as part of the master plan, we want to come out and look at how's that going to look different, have them properly prepared. So those kindergarten students will retire in about the year 2070. We have no idea what that world's going to look like. There's predictions that 65% of them will be working in jobs that haven't even been created yet. So it's mind-boggling to think about. This is what it is. Preparing students for jobs that don't exist using technologies that haven't yet been invented in order to solve problems that don't even know are problems yet. So how do we do this? Well, one of the ways is we've been pretty forward-thinking about certain things we've done. And the board has adopted our graduate profile, which is really looking forward to the desired characteristics of what we expect out of our students. And it kind of illustrates an authentic commitment to a whole education. Not an education that's just about academics and college and career preparation, to preparing the whole child to be successful in the 21st century. We've emphasized these 4 C's of learning for a number of years now. And Tony Wagner, who's a real forward-thinking gentleman who writes in 21st Century Skills, he identifies all of these skills are going to be necessary for having good jobs in what's called the knowledge economy, for being successful in college, for being leaders in communities like ours. And so we believe that between our emphasis on the 4 C's and what's in the graduate profile, we've captured all of this. Now our challenge is that these are complex things to accomplish, right? And when you have all this change going on, it makes it even a greater challenge to figure out what to do. So when you do that, you need situations where you have flexibility and you have enough space to accomplish all of this. Where do we have a space that allows kids to be entrepreneurs? Do we have spaces outdoors for kids to explore, use of curiosity and imagination? As Kirby told you a minute ago, we're limited in space in a lot of places. Our schools have traditional designs. Traditional designs, hallway, rectangular classrooms down the sides of the hallway, and then when you go into the classroom, kids are in these egg carton classrooms, right? All aligned in nice, neat rows. And this is really the reality at our secondary schools. They are still in one-size-fits-all, cumbersome, heavy to move, combination chairs and desks at our 3 secondary schools. When I visited Hill Country, there were 2 girls in the class whose feet did not touch the floor in the chair, and there was a big 8th grade boy who could not fit in one. And there's one size for everyone. They cause a great lack of flexibility when nowadays kids want to collaborate. They want to work together. They really want to be able to learn, and it's very difficult to do that. But we've looked at a lot of furniture that causes kids to be able to move and reform themselves in small groups or individually or whole groups. And Julia Weber is actually in one of the chairs over there, and I welcome all of you to try it. They're quite remarkable. See, the backpacks go underneath for books and everything. Really cool, really cool. And that's what students want. They want to be able to collaborate and learn together. Our teachers want flexible classrooms. They want to be able to do whole group instruction, and then when kids need to get to work, they quickly shift into these collaborative groups. They need to, if a student needs to be alone, they can go work alone. When we look ahead at what our kids are going to do, we know that our graduates are going to be primarily what are called knowledge workers. It's a term that Peter Drucker came up with a few years ago. And Gensler, which is a pretty famous design company worldwide, identified 4 work modes that are needed for knowledge work. And that's focus, collaborate, learn, and socialize. The focus is a spot that someone can work on a project, writing, whatever, by themselves without interruption. And we see those in modern workplaces. And then collaborate is when a group works together, either a pair or more than that, to complete some kind of project or to achieve a goal. And then learning is acquiring new knowledge and skills. And the way modern companies are, and we've been real lucky, some of us have been able to visit Google, and we've visited Apple's headquarters in Cupertino, and you can go here to GSM downtown, lots of places that show you these kind of spaces. Multiple flexible spaces for their people to work and learn in. And finally, this whole issue of socializing, where people need the opportunity to get together, to talk, to laugh, to form bonds, to become part of a community, and to relax at times. Google has multiple spaces. There is not a single employee at Google that is more than 100 feet from food. And they think that it's so important that people have the opportunity to socialize and be together. Well, the reason I show you this came up loud and clear when talking to our students and our teachers. They want the same 4 kinds of spaces at our campuses. Kids want the opportunity to be able to focus. Now, when you're in an 8-carton room, that can sometimes be challenging because of other kids in there distracting you. They need the opportunity to do things on their own. They need spaces where they can read quietly. They can do reflective learning. Some kids need a space where they can just kind of collect themselves. Right? They want absolutely greater opportunity to collaborate. This came out first and foremost in every interview I conducted. Opportunity to work together in the spaces to do so. We have all types of learners. Many of you have heard of different learning styles. You've heard of multiple intelligences, all these kind of things. So we have kids that want to learn independently. We have kids that need great structure when they learn and great guidance from a teacher. And we have virtually all of our kids who like to learn with others. And during that process, they can actually learn and meet some of their social needs. And then, of course, all kids like to socialize. This is a big issue. We don't have spaces at our secondary schools to really do this. One of the questions I ask is, what's your favorite space? At Hill Country, it was the new library. The furniture, the ability to relax in there and everything. High school, Shap Court, and the Commons came up. They need spaces like that. The high school kids, many of them, and I know some of you in here who've had kids that have been athletes or in the band or whatever. We have kids that spend 10 to 12 hours at the high school on some days. It becomes a home away from home. And they talked about the need for a home base. So for some of the kids, it's the band hall. For others, it's the Commons. We even had kids who said, the football locker room is my home base. I'll go there during lunch just to get away and be with some of the other football guys. We don't have enough of those kind of spaces for kids. At elementary, we have built and are in the process of building a final series of great playgrounds. These are places where kids socialize and play and have a great time. That whole issue of outdoor space came through loud and clear in these, this whole symposium process, that we need spaces for kids to garden, to explore outdoors. The kids love the nature trails at Valley View Forest Trail in Bridgepoint here. They just want to be out there in natural light and doing things and all that. The other area that's been really important and our board has talked about often is STEM, science and technology, engineering, and math. Tony Belfi is an executive here in Austin with IBM, saying it's the single most important factor in continuing economic health of our state. The prediction is STEM jobs in the state of Texas will increase by 22% by 2018, and up to 75% will be right here in Central Austin. Those are the jobs that our students can go into. And then we get to keep our kids, and they don't move to New York City and California and all those places. Stay here, which I like that. So we've added a tremendous amount of STEM courses over the last few years. Advanced biotech, multivariable calculus, robotics, health science, all sorts of things at the high school. At the middle schools, we have computer animation, computer graphics. Next year, we begin robotics at the middle schools. But we have forced them into existing spaces not designed for those kind of programs. And I see a fine gentleman in the back shaking his head because Mr. Tim Jacobson is here, one of our robotics instructors. nationally recognized robotics program, by the way. I'm sorry.
The other Tim.
We have another Tim Jacobs. I apologize, Tim. So we put them in a regular classroom. And you can see the numbers here of how many kids are working in there. And in fact, they spill out into the hallway to do their work on their projects. And even outdoors, I've seen them in the parking lot because we just didn't have the proper space for them. The programs that we compete against, that we visited, they actually have industrial shops for their robotics program. So it's proper for the equipment, and it ensures safety and that sort of thing. So we have great needs there. In the community forums last year, there was a lot of talk about STEM, and then all of a sudden people said, wait a minute, STEM's not good enough in Eanes. Don't forget about the art. We can't just concentrate on these science and math areas. So then it became STEAM. And that is another need in the district. Is you have this situation where we need kids that are not only great thinkers critically, mathematically and scientifically, but creative thinkers too. Interesting, at Google, they're hiring a lot of music majors and art majors to work side by side with the engineers. And so both of these become important to develop the kind of thinkers we need for the future. And we see this in robotics. There's a lot of creativity in there. Of course, like digital graphics, those kids have unbelievable artistic skills combined with computer skills. And they combine the two in a real STEAM. So we need to, in the future, look for proper spaces for these programs, both in the STEM and in our art programs that go with it. As I mentioned before, furniture is a great problem throughout our campuses that limits what kids are able to do. It doesn't provide the flexibility that today's learners really want to have. We did a lot of looking into it. One of the reasons I asked you to stand up is movement's really important to keep your brain engaged. Right? As I sit here and look at Brian Shippey and his foot wiggling, that's a natural thing to do. It's natural for kids to fidget to keep their brains engaged. It's their bodies working to keep them engaged. Sitting in a static chair does not allow that. The kind of chair that Julia is sitting in, she can wiggle back and forth the way you see kids do, or rock or whatever, and not bother anyone else compared to what I used to do with my pencil in class or other kids do. So there's some real benefits to the right kind of furniture for achievement. There's actually studies about how much more kids concentrate and stick with things. So that it's kind of exciting to look at those possibilities. This is that same classroom. This is Tanner Fisk's classroom at Hill Country. They've done a tremendous amount of research on furniture. They've brought in people to present and everything, and they've actually been given furniture by a furniture company to try, and it's unbelievable. So you can see, got a young man who wants to work by himself, that's fine. These girls want to be in a group. The others, furniture just rolls and they fit it all together. Finally, teachers need spaces too. Teachers need individual spaces to do lesson planning and confidential paperwork. They want spaces where they can collaborate. Teachers want spaces where they can learn. As it was pointed out, we don't have those kind of spaces. This is using Barton Creek's library. We displace people all the time. They need spaces to socialize. Our schools are designed, if you remember the first map you saw of Barton Creek, those 3 hallways. At the farthest end of that one, teacher has to go clear from there, all the way down that hall, all the way up to the office to find an adult restroom. Shippey can make it in about 2.5 minutes. Some of the teachers, it takes them as long as 3, depending on your pace, to go to the closest adult restroom. And of course, We train in the boardroom, which is awkward because of the shape and the board table doesn't move, and we do professional learning in the ATS building. This is great. Built-in technology, tables that move, rearranged and everything, and that's our greatest learning space. The other area that's really come out strong in these reports is community involvement. To get the whole community involved in our schools. Right now we begin by serving infants in our CDC program and go up to preschool kids. We had CDC at all 6 elementaries, we're down to 3 because of the space needs. There have been as many as 250 community children on the waiting list. We currently can serve our own staff's children and a few community members. There's a great need in our community for space, for childcare, and early childhood education. Same thing after school. We're serving nearly 500 kids in our after-school program. But because of space concerns, because the teachers are still working in their classrooms, they're preparing for the next day, you can see there's a karate class going on in the same space as the after-school care program, the Easy Care program is going on. Because we don't have any space designed for that sort of thing, which means we don't have any space available for the other end, our senior citizens and retirees. There are no places during the day for us to offer them opportunities for recreation and exercise, for computer classes, opportunities to socialize, even opportunities to have meals. One of my dreams is that we have a culinary program at the high school and we actually feed retirees and others in our community in one of our buildings. I want to talk about dreaming? Yeah, that's a dream. So bottom line is we've identified we need more learning spaces that are flexible, connected for what's called blended learning. Blended learning is taking the best of teaching approaches and combining it with the power of technology to enhance that teaching. We need spaces for all 4 of those work modes for both our students and our teachers. We really want improved furniture, and then we need the other important spaces for STEM, for art, the outdoor spaces, and community spaces. People are social. This whole idea of learning together is important. We love to have collective experiences, and kids love those more than us probably. They like to design together, they like to cheer together, to play together, to perform together, to laugh together, and to learn together. And what we're hoping out of this process is that we're able to come out with a great master plan that prepares kids for the future and for becoming our future. Thank you.
Everybody, we know it's 8 o'clock. We have one more presentation that we would like to share with you, and that is Carrie Taylor talking about enriching opportunities. And we want to reassure you that we will stay here as long as needed afterwards to make sure that we hear your comments and questions. So if you be willing to bear with us, we have one more. We think it's really, really important, however, to share all this information because all of this goes into the mix as we look at creating a master plan that's meaningful and effective for you.
Good evening. I'm Carrie Taylor, Director of Fine Arts for the school district. I was head of the Enriching Opportunities Committee. Would like to give you a little bit of the scope about that committee if I can hear. This is working. There we go. We had representatives from grade levels K through 12, specific programs, community and parents, administrators, and students on our committee. We had on our committee people who represented programs that are specific in nature, such as these that are listed there. I won't read them all to you. Okay? And we represented over 35 programs, including 18 UIL sports, 10 fine arts, CATE or CTE, which is robotics and some of the design classes, Bill Becker was talking about club sports and the Child Development Center. And different locations around the 9 campuses, our stadium and competition fields, practice facilities, performing arts facilities. I tell you all of that so you understand the scope of our committee, and that our task for this stage was to identify the needs in the district for these specific areas. We were successful and identified 167 different areas. I'm not going to go through those tonight, however, but I will tell you that some of these areas fell in simple maintenance of facilities that need to be upkept, as which Bob will be aware of that and has been made aware of that. Many of the things we discovered are in support of existing programs. In our recent history of our school district, we have purchased things that are some might call capital outlay out of bond packages for things such as athletic equipment, musical instruments, school boards, specialized furniture, and uniforms. So all of those were identified, and they certainly are needs and ongoing needs on a yearly basis. Furthermore, we went and looked at the individual schools and talked about classrooms, talked about stage and performance areas. If I can point out one thing, some of these items, like down here at the bottom, it says update lighting, sound equipment, and drapery. That does not cause or call for any new construction. It may just call for remodeling or perhaps redesign or simply maintenance type work in that area. However, you will get to some things that you will see that says classroom design. It may say provide for or additional classroom space, instructional space. Those are new space ideas. So I won't read each one of these to you as we go through here, but you can see that we'll classify those in 2 different ways as we move on. Elementary schools, we also talked about indoor spaces, gym and cafeteria. We talked about outdoor spaces, including for EISD classes and community, and opportunities for promote healthy lifestyle choices such as nature walks and trails. Again, I have a list of 167 of them, so I'm not trying to give you the total thing. We looked at middle school fine arts, both at Hill Country and there's an additional one there, and Westridge as well. In middle school performing arts, felt a need to identify the need for 400-seat performance facility that would service band, choir, drama, orchestra, and tech theater. They're not able to access the high school facility very often. Middle school athletics, we kind of group this inside, and again, you can see some things that are upgrading or maintenance. And as we move to outside, some of these things will be additional things for our competition fields, adding in storage, and the possibility of turfing practice areas. As we look at Westlake High School, we have 2 different categories that we have existing problems with. One, or have created problems for us. One is we have new programs that have been recently established, such as our color guard, lacrosse, robotics, and rugby. This is not meant to be all-inclusive, by the way. And then we have growth and existing programs that have been around for quite some time, such as our art and design classes, cheerleading, dance has gone from 1 period to 7 periods taught by 2 teachers. Our music classes, band, choir, orchestra, soccer, Special Olympics, wrestling, the list could go on. So we identified some specific things in those areas. In fine arts, such as a safe loading dock area, additional classroom and choir, a classroom or dance studio and supportive areas for the dance program, that's Highline and Fine Arts Dance. Our winter guard or color guard also is in need of a full-size classroom for them, perhaps storage areas for orchestra, and a performing arts facility and tech theater, an additional room, but also some maintenance type things there. Finally, we also identified in additional opportunities, we talked about the chat room, we talked about a space for professional meetings and presentations. We talked about our community requiring or asking for an indoor facility with space for community events, eating places, practices for athletics, marching band, other events as well, and adequate parking facility for that. There's our Kate, or career and technology education, the additional classrooms, flexible spaces, media room, and storage spaces. And this was quite common, brought up many different groups, a multi-purpose indoor area, which would be available during and after school hours for large group projects and additional small meetings. I think you can see by now some of these perhaps could be rolled together into one, some may be separated. There's our robotics, which is a program that's fairly new and has grown quite a bit, with the need for different classroom areas, shop areas, and practice areas, and of course the office and storage areas to support that. Athletics. Here are general athletic expectations. Again, I won't read through each one of those. I will point out media rooms was on nearly everybody's list. And some of these are not specific to an individual program, but something that the students have requested for some of their social activities. Stadium area is there. I had to find out what a FAC was, so at FAC it's a timing system for track and field. So we don't need to add any more FAC for some of us. And interesting enough, training room is just right after that, isn't it? I didn't do that on purpose. So. Weight room, additional weight room, we're spread out over 3 different places at this point in time. And then we went into specific, program-specific areas. Again, some of these things listed are simply remodeling or upgrading what is there. And then right there is something that perhaps is new that is not in existence at this point in time. Cheerleading is an area that's grown quite a bit. We have a gym in the 9th grade center that is not a full-size gym, so it's not a competitive level high school gym. Some club sport requirements there. We go through some football, indoor practice facility, golf, soccer, softball, and quite a bit done to that area over there, including some fencing for controlled access, swimming, tennis, and controlled access to their area, and wrestling as well, which currently practices in the cafeteria with gyms on the floor that are picked up each day. And that's our enriching opportunities there.
So I think you can see a number of themes that are starting to come up over and over again. One of those being that when our schools were first built, the number of programs being offered was so much less than what is being provided now. Another theme that kept coming up is providing the right kinds of space as we look at the skill sets that our children are going to need in order to be successful in a global knowledge economy. The collaboration, the creativity, the critical thinking, curiosity, the communication. Those skills require different types of learning activities, and those have spatial implications. Another theme that came up is the fact that traditionally our schools just served children aged kindergarten through 12th grade. We can't afford just to have our schools serve students of that age. They really do need to be resources for the entire community. That has implications. What should they be? So the master plan hopes to take all of this information and put it into the mix in order to provide you with options that are going to, again, enable you to live out the vision as we would like to open it up
One concept that I think needs to be highlighted here is that we need to have campuses located proximate to where students live. And while the master plan needs to look forward, it also needs to look backward and realize that for whatever reason, the elementary campuses are clustered to the east of 360, whereas today the growth is primarily in the western part of the district, and the children who live particularly in the Cuernavaca area in the Valley View attendance zone travel a very far distance, which poses a lot of problems and concerns with respect to the time that they're spending on the buses, the time that that takes away from rest, the time that takes away from after-school activities. And while I found Mr. Beckfield's presentation fascinating about how many things will probably change in the future, I think it's pretty safe to assume that children are still going to go to a school for their education. And so I would like to hope to see that the master plan would address the need, as I see it, for a campus, elementary campus in the western part of the district.
And that's a really important point, and also a point that we heard at the last community forum session as well. So that is something, as we now start to look at options, that we will put into the mix in order to be able to alleviate that concern. Other comments, questions? Anything surprising? Yes, go ahead.
My name is David Perkins. Has there been any effort to rationalize these lists in a process of optimization? Like if you think about Bill's presentation and how students are going to learn in the future and the kinds of spaces they need, we don't have all those spaces in the high school, that's clear. But there's also a long list of enriching opportunities that have facility needs that are also not able to be met in the existing facilities. And I couldn't help wonder whether or not there was the opportunity, for example, when it comes to 3 weight rooms, if you, on the 6th list, there was an identified need for a single weight room. That frees up space for academic work areas and those kinds of things if you were to go forward with a separate, facility. So has that taken place yet? Is that process of distilling and thinking through?
That is what's coming next. What we will start doing tomorrow is kind of taking a look at what should be happening district-wide. When we come back in June, we're going to take a look at what does that actually mean then at each site, so that if it's decided to centralize a particular function rather than have several of them across the district, that needs to be woven into the conversation. And now we are getting to the point where we can start looking at and considering options for how those needs might be addressed best.
Judith, the board, of course, has seen the schematic of the different stages of the process, but a lot of people haven't seen that. Could you just simply, in 3 minutes or so, articulate, you said what happens in June, can you just kind of give everyone a broad spectrum of the process?
Do we have the overall timeline on images that we can lay out?
It's on the website.
Okay, all right. Excellent. Okay. Oh, okay.
I'll see if I can find it.
All right, excellent. What we have been doing to date is really kind of gathering the information and all of the needs and all of the desires, and looking at, again, not just what exists now, not just what's being provided today, but looking at the needs as we can project them 3, 6, 10 years out into the future, understanding, as Dr. Bechtel said, that we can't possibly predict everything that's going to happen in the future. And that's where the flexibility and agility comes in, to be able to provide the kinds of spaces that can continue to grow and change as you as a district continue to grow and change and institute new programs, try new methods of instructional delivery. So now that we've got all that information, now it's time for us to thread it together. We start at looking at it district-wide and putting together a list of kind of parameters. District-wide, what are those things that we want to make sure we provide at each level, elementary level, middle school level, high school level. Once that's established, once we have that kit of parts established, then we can take and look at each individual site and say, okay, if these are the things that we want to provide across the district, what does that mean now for each site? How can each site best support and deliver on those promises and those needs? Yes?
My name is Lauren Perkins. I have 4 children that have been in the district who have graduated. And I just wanted to speak about the Ben-Hur site, talk about an opportune place to have your facilities needs met. It could serve the whole district, it could serve, of course, the high school because it's in such close proximity. I know that in the past there's been many things proposed for that site, and I would just hope that this process would, identify the use of that land, because I really feel that it's frustrating to see it being unused, to see a building that really ought to be knocked down, and it just seems to be such an opportune place, and it has so much potential. And speaking of that, I also represent the SHAP Club, which is the booster club at the high school. Been involved in that program for 12 years, and every year I hear the swim team beg and plead for a pool. And you talk about enriching opportunities. Well, a pool, is not only for high school students on the swim team. Our high school students actually don't really have their own pool, of course, you know that. They rent at a Rollingwood pool, and they don't always have the hours that they just get what they get. But of course, a pool would serve the whole community. It could be that place where you would have your social activities for your children. You could offer positive recreation for our students at the high school. It could involve a covered facility. It could serve all of those sports that are affected by weather. It could serve for anything that has lightning and has to go indoors. It just seems to be. I hope that is one of your foremost objectives for this group, is to make use of that space. Whatever you do, just get going on it, because I just feel like it's not getting done, and I just wonder if it'll ever get done. And I just would really hope that you could find some sort of multi-purpose use for that. I know that it could be 60 feet tall, so that's about 5 stories, right? Think of what 5 stories could do. I mean, you could have your pool, your indoor facility, your meeting rooms, you could have your dance floor, you could have your wrestling room. I mean, I would love to think big for that site. I think it's just such a prime piece, and just it could serve so many students and so many, elderly population to go swimming, or preschools to go in. It could serve ADA. They could go in and use the pool for exercise. It could be a training center for rehab. I mean, I'll go on and on, right? But I just wanted to make sure that y'all heard that there is a need at the high school. There's a lot of people that would really like to see that come about.
Can I just confirm, is that the site you've been speaking of as the Shriner?
Yes.
Thank you. So,
Yes, in answer to your question, we are looking at all of the sites district-wide and putting that into the equation as we look at the best distribution of support for these
really
programs.
appreciate it. Thank you.
There may be a reason why this can't happen, but is there any reason why we can't put a parking garage on the Westlake High School site that would free up some of the impervious cover issue for other things there? Don?
No, there's no reason why we couldn't have a parking lot. That's a double
crazy
negative.
expensive?
We can have a parking lot. A parking garage.
Parking garage,
Yes.
that we can.
Yes.
just a factor in terms
It's just
cost is the major factor there. I think 10 times as expensive as a parking lot for a car.
So it's really expensive.
It's really expensive.
It's not to say we can't look at it. It's possible. And so, speaking of possibilities, that's really where we are right now, is tomorrow we're going to start looking at scenarios and we're going to start exploring what are the range of possibilities that we should be accommodating, looking at all of the sites within the district. Yes, sir.
I guess one of the things I'd like to, I don't know if this is the opportunity, but I think one of the lessons from the last bond was how do we get a community buy-in? We obviously, everybody has a lot of things that they wish could happen for the district. But one of the things that we heard pretty loud and clear was adding more space required more maintenance. I know that firsthand because I was one of the supporters, and still am, of a school in the Western District. I feel it's a need that our part of the community doesn't have now, that doesn't depend on what the growth is. At this particular juncture, we're not getting our needs met. But one of the big holdbacks was, what do we do with the existing school? Valley View. Okay? So on that particular one, the argument was, and was successful, was if we build a new school, we now have to maintain the old one. And we came up with some good ideas and things that I thought were a great use of the property. But I think for us, in our particular case, would be determining what to do with possibly a property that maybe the community would rather see somewhere else. But on the same token, when I hear the list of aspirations, how do we go about getting a community buy-in? Because a lot of the theme that I heard here was more space. So it seems that we're still going to be faced with this same argument from parts of the community that, well, you know, adding more space is more cost, is what it boils down to. So, I mean, I'm glad to see different people here that made that argument. So I feel like bringing them to the table is a great start. And I'd like to see it work through. But there's still the process, and making it a reality, I think, will require everybody working together and coming to some reasonable expectations. So in this plan, or this process, I assume there's been some reach out, but you know, how do we go about bridging the gap between two sides that were pretty far apart in 2010?
I think there were a couple of questions in there, so I'll do my best to answer those. One of the things that the district has really worked hard at doing, and I can't speak to the time before, but I can speak to this time, is really extending the invitation out to be able to participate on a variety of levels, to be able to get that feedback. Again, we talked at the beginning of this meeting about the importance of having each of you here, because each of your voices is important. You each bring a unique perspective. We need to hear what that is, because it's got to be your plan. And so tomorrow, for example, we will be meeting with the Master Plan Task Force again, and we will be playing out different scenarios that address all of the things that you have just brought up. And we will bring those back to the community to get their feedback, to make sure that ultimately the scenario that is landed upon is driven from the community. It's going to be a plan that is of the folks here. Okay? It's not any one group that's dictating how it's come up outside. And that's really important. There are a variety of ways if you haven't had a chance to participate in any of the previous meetings, the information is available on the website. Reports are created at the end of each of these symposiums so that you can read through them, gather information. If you have questions, what is the best way for them to voice those questions in between symposiums?
We have, obviously, we have our Eanes system. Each of the subcommittees continues to meet, so on each side, there's opportunities there. And it's been beneficial to be a part of us.
Right. So, and I would welcome you all back tomorrow morning, bright and early, 8 a.m., to help us assemble these scenarios that we are going to be then letting you provide feedback onto. But if you want to actually help create them tomorrow, please join us. Yes, sir.
We have more academic programs and more athletic programs than we did 5 years ago, and much more than we did 10 years ago, and much more than we had 15 years ago. And so our maintenance resources are increasingly taxed. Our bond money goes increasingly towards maintenance. And I want to know how open the board is to considering public-private partnerships that have been done in other school districts and other universities around the country to try and make more resources available in a more cost-effective manner. More is better than less. I think we all know that in this district. And so how open-minded is the board to considering those kinds of partnerships?
I will tell you my impression is that they're extremely open. And again, what we're trying to do is explore all those scenarios. And those public-private partnerships are an important component.
And those are being considered?
Those will be considered.
By the community groups?
By the master plan task force, which is comprised of members of the community.
Okay.
And you are all, again, welcome to participate.
So they're not just looking at the resource needs, they're also looking at the ways to resolve the resource needs.
Creatively, how can we meet the needs that are being voiced by the community?
Okay.
And if anybody wants to piggyback.
Well, David, even though this meeting is posted, there's not enough of a specific agenda item for the board to be able to react. So our silence doesn't mean we're not interested in what you said, but we're a little bit limited in this format.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think one of the things that I can add to that question is, as the board has considered a variety of options over the last probably 5 years or more, we get to a point where we don't have a master plan from which to make good forward-thinking decisions. And so they're often saying, we need to get a master plan first and then move forward. That has been probably a stumbling block or any hesitation that I've seen several times has been because a master plan would really help inform the direction. That aside, I think any opportunity for resources into the district will be looked at by our board often. So
It's just a win-win. Again, we saw the fiscal responsibility as an item that was articulated within the vision statement.
So will you also consult the taxpayers prior to putting motions to the taxpayers?
yes.
In a formal way,
Yes.
which has not been done in the past?
Yeah, one of the things that we've done already this year, at least a couple of times, is do some surveying of our community, and we will have, again, additional surveying. That's one of the things we want to do is to have an opportunity to provide input. If you can't come to a meeting or you can't be on master plan task force or whatever, that we can get some statistical or quantifiable information about where the community is regarding issues beforehand.
Great, thank you.
But again, you hit the nail on the head. Everybody is welcome to participate and to help weigh in so that, again, the master plan reflects your needs. Yes?
You mentioned a meeting here tomorrow, and that's the task force meeting?
That is correct. And that's the planning task
Master
force.
planning task force.
It's at Hill Country.
At Hill Country. Are those meetings open to everybody or just to the members of the task force?
They have been open. We have asked for people to attend.
And where are these meetings posted? I mean, these community forums have been highly publicized. I've heard nothing about other meetings.
Where? On the website.
On the website.
Could we send a listserv for those?
Not necessarily for the task force meetings. Those meetings, we were, because of space issues, we were really trying to use our community engagement committee to reach out to areas, making sure we got the west part of the district, making sure we got elementary, middle, business members, community members. But that being said, if you're interested, then please reach out to us.
So are they posted on the website though?
Those meetings are not.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, I'm so sorry. Please.
Two things. I'm so excited that y'all are looking forward. And I do know when you talk about a master plan and we're only talking about facilities, it's really hard for me to disconnect the teacher and staff part of it. And I really hope that we're also have a master plan for developing our staff and our teachers, because investment in them, and that's who our kids see every day. And we, some of the dollar amounts we talked about seem so big, and I think of it as teacher, that's a teacher, that's a teacher. And then my second thing is, I had one question, it doesn't have the answer right now, but I noticed on there, on 2018, there was a huge jump to 25 million in the assessments finding. And if you would just, I don't know if in a sentence you can explain that, but why would we have such a big jump?
That would be, what they do is they look at the life cycle of equipment, carpeting to HVAC to any number of things in the building. And that's just the life cycle of those things are due up to expire in that year. And that's where we look at it and see exactly where they are.
But why is it?
If we don't take care of them now?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, yes.
Things stay.
Bob, is that because enough facilities were built in 2018 minus 30 years that suddenly in 2018?
Even no matter how good the equipment, you go back 20 years earlier from when a lot of the equipment was maybe put in through a bond issue or whatever may have happened, or new construction. As those things retire or come to their life expectancy, you have to replace them, or you have to, or they're going to stop. So it just so happened in this case, that year is when several high-ticket items are coming due. And that's when you can look and see if you can push some of that to the year before, because then you, 20 years down the road, will have that high spike again, and you can slowly level that out where it's doable every year versus huge every year.
I didn't know if it was because of some poor planning previously, not intentional, but just for, is there something we can do sooner to make sure that doesn't happen?
And looking at that, yes, you can address that by looking at those spikes and seeing if you can shift it and do it 2-3 years beforehand, and then from 25, you've now cut it down to maybe 8, so you've got 8 million, 8 million, 8 million.
And speaking to Tim, who's so worried about spending money, which I think all of us are, I think breaking that out, like now, like tell us, don't wait till 2018 and say we need a $25 million bond, but tell us now.
And that's one of the nice things about what we've done with this report is it is updated yearly. So the numbers that we have, next year we can update those numbers with real numbers with actual construction dollars cost. So it's not a report that comes and goes on the shelf and becomes stagnant. Every year it is updated, so the numbers become
But
actual.
that report needs to be on the front page of the Hickey unit. Really.
And I wanted to piggyback and reinforce something that you said at the very beginning, which is that, again, these facilities need to be resources that serve and support the staff and the teachers and the administration as well. And when we think about, for example, collaboration and how they can model the collaboration that is desired of our students, what does that mean, especially for that high school? So yes, very good point. Yes, ma'am.
I'm on one of these, on the outreach committee, and there are several other outreach committee members here today. And one of the things that we want people who are here today and people who aren't here today to know is that this is not your only opportunity to participate. Our committee will come to you if you have a group or if you have an interest in learning more about this process. We serve as a bit of a speakers bureau, and we do go out into the community, and we do meet with groups, and we will come to you if you have questions about what's going on. If we can get a little heads up in advance, and we know that you have specific needs, we can make sure that the people who can answer those specific questions are with us. But I don't want you to feel like your only opportunity to participate is when we have these broader meetings, because there's a group that is trying to get the word out every day that this process is going. So
every school campus leadership team is focusing on this.
Claudia McWhorter is our contact person. Claudia can set it up. So please feel free to contact her. She's easy to get with.
And I would also say, if you have additional suggestions on how we might get the word out even more, please let us know. Also, please, you are ambassadors for this process as well. And if you know of some neighbors or other families that would also be very interested in participating and hearing these messages, please encourage them to come as well.
But remember, we will come to you. You don't have to come to us. We'll come to you. Just let us know you want to learn more.
I got a question. So we're talking about macro here, and we're going to get down to micro. And so we got these planning zones that we've been talking about. What you said, these are important. I mean, at the end of the day, we got to look at the big and we got to look down at these planning zones. So when are we going to have meetings just on once you get all the information, we can really focus in on the planning zones? Because I think, I mean, it's great to hear everybody's issues. Is issues important? But it might not really retain to me. It's important to the whole thing, just really not important. And I mean, I'm saying not important, but it's important. But there's ranking things where you live and what's going on, where you're in life, and people got different places in their life and what we're trying to get out of. But to your point, like he's saying, when you're focusing on a zone, we really need to focus on that zone. And that's where I think you'll get the creative and the real, some real stuff done. And then you take the fight back to the big picture. But when is that going to be? I mean, since you've been doing all these things, but is there going to be meetings and posts where we can get down to these zones where we can really talk about the zones and what's going on in those zones?
Now, are you talking about the demographics within those zones, or are you talking
the planning zones. I mean, what goes on that zone? I mean, there's demographics, there's schools, there's parks, there's practice fields,
The planning zones is strictly to help us with managing our demographics and our population. And so I just wanted to explain that's what that is. Different planning zones go to different schools now. And could there be modifications? Sure they could. But right now we're looking district-wide. When you have 5 of the 6 schools either getting close to capacity, at capacity, or whatever, moving them around isn't really going to help. We've got to deal with either program or space at each school.
Well, I understand, but at some point you got to deal with that issue in those areas. You have to. I mean, look, it's a budget, right? We all got to go fight for the budget. So, I mean, I understand that. I'm just saying, with the planning, is there going to be where we get down, once we get all this stuff, so we get educated? I need to know what's going out there. I know that we need money, but at this point, I would like to focus in on what I like to focus in on so we can help. I mean, and really put some energy into that point. Because we're all busy. I mean, we all got different things, and we all got things going on in our lives, and so to use our time, because it's something important to me. So I just like, look, use the best use of time.
This is the community forums is try to help you keep up to speed and know what's going on. We'll go back and start working on it. Any of you that want to know what's happening next, we can have the community outreach come and do that. We'll start at the district level, and we will get down to the individual school level. No doubt about it. We look at the system as a whole, and then we go, what about elementary? What about middle? What about high school? Or we go, what about high school? What about middle?
Yeah, I mean, because you'll get back to the high school, go, here's what we're going to do with the high school. Here's what we need to do over the next 10, 15 years. So I go, look, that's it.
Right.
So when is those, how close are we to that? I guess, how close are we to that?
Well, here you got June, July, August. We'll begin developing the plans and each campus implementation priorities right there.
Okay, and that, so those months?
That's next.
Okay.
Which one are you interested in?
Yes.
What's
I
that?
just wanted to sound the opposite extreme of what was
what's your-
just said. I wanted to
Well, I
thank
mean,
you for
all my kids
including
grew up in
this
this.
in the early stages, because
like for
so oftentimes
Country,
we
it
see
looks
the
like crap.
package
It'd be
and
next to
not
me.
the.
I lived out in Barn Creek West, and
So I think
people had
it's
to
really
go
helpful
from
to hear these things
from
now.
Lost Creek all the way up
And
to.
allow us to provide
to
input.
Thank you. And that is the ultimate purpose. Yes.
Do you know when the June meeting will be?
June 20th. 20th.
And what location? We don't have a location yet. We're struggling with.
It's a full-day workshop.
Full day.
We're going to be asking the site-based teams to take a pass at the impact. It'll be a fun day.
Right. So as soon as we know, that will be posted in terms of the location, so that you can all clear your calendars on that day. Other questions? Yes.
Well, the only other thing to mention, Julie, is that you're going to hear from everyone, which I really appreciate the whole process, that you're trying to hear from all parts of the community. But the essence is that we need to prioritize at some point, and certain issues are just, they will serve a larger portion of the community. And so you're going to have to prioritize. So essentially, what we're looking at is how are you going to prioritize? That's the real question.
Right.
So how does one, push their own, special interest forward?
There are a number of factors that come into play. A very important reason for taking the time to articulate that consolidated vision right at the beginning was to be able to help understand what those priorities are. The principles and standards. We did a gap analysis at each site, and we asked each site to articulate their top key issues. When we look at the scenarios, we also have to feed in the implementation schedule. We are going to be breaking that down into 3, 6, and 10-year phases. The pricing then has to be part of the mix as we look at those options, so that in the end, we make sure that the options that result are taking into account the priorities that you have identified within the cost, within the budget that the community can support.
And I guess ultimately, we all are governed in our school district by a board. And that board will help with planning steps and assumptions and validations of certain priorities because that's what they're electing to do. So I think along the way, we'll come back in June with some, some assumptions or priority statements that the board will wrestle with and make a determination, yes, that's an area of priority or not, and they'll have to make those decisions. We'll try to structure it such that that is a reflection of what we've heard and what the task force has worked through. We want to give them all that information, but ultimately the board will set our direction even in the master plan, and we'll try to do that in a step-by-step manner.
Are the current facilities financially sustainable?
Financially sustainable, you mean in terms of?
I'm just looking at the second paragraph, and it says, Eanes ISD will have financially sustainable facilities. Currently, do we have financially sustainable facilities?
Well, that kind of gets back to what Bob was
I
saying.
think that, yeah, Bob's analysis of the Q ratings, were you here for that, David?
I wasn't.
Oh.
So they are or they're
Yes.
not?
Yes, they are.
They fit within the
Independent
budget.
of new bond money or dependent on new bond money?
because of previous bond monies, we're in the shape we're in, and if we continue that trend, we'll continue to keep them in that shape.
The reason I'm asking is because, you know, our bonds are paying for things like musical instruments, which I think are maintenance. You know, we provide those things, but if we have to go to, I mean, our operating budgets don't pay for the renewal of things as simple as musical instruments, which I think they should. And so the result is we have to go to the community at large, the taxpayers at large, and plead with them to fund things that are basic in our school systems.
Well,
It wasn't always like that.
David, that's a challenge that school districts all over the state are facing right now.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, in particular, Chapter 41, property wealthy districts are I think, especially challenged by the revenue sources that we have seen decrease over the last couple of years. It was bad enough when the revenue sources were basically frozen for 5 or 6 years. And then in the last legislative session, we got bumped downward, despite the promise not to do that. And so it's incredibly challenging. Right now, the board is trying desperately to set a budget for next year that only taps $4.5 million of the fund balance. So school districts all over the state are forced to sometimes go through a bond, as long as it's legal, as long as it's a capital expense. Chapter 41 districts, when they do that, they get penny for penny. All of those revenue collections are kept in the district, and as you know, 55% of the revenue collected on our M&O tax goes back to the state. And so, because of the challenge we have on the M&O side, hopefully we'll get some relief from the legislature. We've gotten a positive court decision, but you know, frankly, we're going to have to continue using some bond resources for things that we preferably wouldn't like to do, but are forced to.
So the heart of my point is that it's critical that the community at large, not the 25 or 27% of people that have kids in the school district, but it's critical that the other 70-odd% know what's happening in the school, know that we're dependent on bond money to operate the schools, and that we communicate early. This the lady who was here's point before about, you know, making this known in the PIC units. It's important that the taxpayers know early and are educated before we put a bond in front of them that gives the impression that we want everything. Because in some respects we do, but we can't afford everything. So that's my.
I guess I just wanted to open it up while we're doing the outreach and talking about the Chapter 41, I guess, property wealth. Are we looking into trying to educate the public or getting any kind of buy-in on the 2 golden penny options?
I think that's
that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, I think that's really beyond the domain of the.
Yeah. This is really about a master plan process, but I'll talk to you about it.
Okay.
Let me ask you this question. I know we're getting late. Your charge, Cunningham-Group's charge, is obviously to try to capture the will of the community and to facilitate a process that is ended up with a master facilities plan. And obviously, you know, you live in Minnesota, right? So you're personally not impacted by this, and that's an advantage because you bring a very objective viewpoint. Which is part of the reason why you hire an outside firm to do this sort of thing. So my question is, your charge is to try to capture what the community wants. If you don't do that, then the chances of it being successful or supported are minimized. But my question to you is, can you do that and at the same time put an objective lens on all this feedback, and will some of your final suggestions that obviously the board has to approve, but your final suggestions, how much of your objectivity and your looking at this from an outsider, how much does that come into play in terms of what your final recommendations would be?
Would like to clarify one thing on that.
Okay.
Is that the recommendations are really generated by you all. We bring our international experience to bear in terms of the information on how others who have similar issues have dealt with those, but ultimately it's the community's decision in terms of which direction we go and which options are decided upon. And that is the reason why we have invited so many folks to participate in these workshops, is we co-create. We design, we have a mantra, we design with, not for. I think that's an important distinction. It's not our plan.
Right.
It's.
I guess I was wondering, just in the scenario of a consensus, and some issues may not be possible.
May I also just identify a difference between the master planning process and identifying a long-term vision for the district that will help guide your decisions in the short term? So, and it's different than bond plan or a bond plan.
Sure.
Or the politics or the constraints around that, which is different than a master planning effort, which is identifying where you want to go as a community over time. Because the reality of the facility assessment report is there's a huge amount of money that has to be invested in the schools, even if you don't choose to do anything, even if there's nothing, you choose to make no change, you're looking at those kinds of things.
Sure.
So what we're trying to do is facilitate a process that allows you to make really good decisions about spending money, about not wasting money. You don't want to replace a roof or you don't want to build it anymore. Things like that, really simple. How do you use your money to invest it in money?
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
So to that end that y'all were just speaking about, I think it was a week and a half ago at Eanes Elementary, there was discussion as to a fence. And it seems like it's kind of getting fast-tracked to going on this summer, if I understood the discussion. And I think that kind of runs, to me, counter to this process we're doing here. That would just be my 2 cents.
I cannot speak to that myself.
I can see how you can get that feeling. The master plan is a larger and more long-range kind of view. It would look at what about the classrooms that we have at each of our schools and the needs that Mr. Rector spoke about flexibility. What about a robotics program? What about our special needs program, our art program, our whatever? That's different than whether or not, we're going to continue to put playgrounds in here, and we're going to continue to do all of the projects that were planned for the summer outside of the development of the master plan. But remember, the master plan is a 3, 6, and 10-year process, so that if we look 10 years down the road, are our facilities going to look exactly the way they do today, or have we developed that roadmap to get there? To me, the security enhancements at a particular school are of a much different view than the master plan view. So would we have the potential for, years down the road, the master plan says, but we're looking at a different facility and that ramp may have to be relocated. That could happen at any of our schools. That would be minimal, but it could happen at any of our schools. But we have to keep working on our facilities and on our schools for kids, even though we've got this long.
We would like to be respectful of all of your time. It's coming on 9 p.m. this evening. If there aren't any more questions, we'd like to say thank you, thank you, thank you. This was really good feedback. We really appreciate it. We have captured it. We look forward to continuing the conversation with all y'all. And we'll see you in 20 minutes.